Hello there,
Hi. Good afternoon to you, Adam.
and good night to you, Raven. And hello to everybody out
So
there.
how? Hi. So welcome to our sixth episode
Of
of
PinoyChap,
PinoyChap.
yeah.
Yes, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share our videos in Facebook and YouTube.
Get
So
get
yeah,
everybody to like it. Get your family, get your friends.
yes,
Just
yes.
spread it around, basically.
Spread, yeah. So we are giving a lot of very informative stuff. Like
You just
last
gonna have
last
to
week,
forgive me. I need to charge my laptop. Very unprofessional of me. Forgive me.
yeah.
Sorry, you were
So
saying, Raven?
yeah, we last week we had Paul, who's a Filipino video creator from Dubai. So right today we will have a very what do you call
Special
this special from
special guest.
special guest from Hollywood. No, he's not from LA anymore, I think. But he's been making a lot of films and TV shows. Yeah, yeah.
And
So
he's worked with some big names like Sam
big
Raimi, for
name.
example.
Yeah, he's been working with Sam Raimi. So yeah, we will learn a lot of things from him
And
now.
not only
So
that, there's a personal connection with us as well, which we'll get into when
yes,
we bring him in.
yes, yes. So yeah, how's your weekend?
How's
How's
it
your
look?
week?
My week's been pretty good, thank you. Although I can't announce this yet, I'll have to announce it next week. But because I'm part of the British Independent Film Awards, they've announced the films that are going to get into the next round. And there are a couple of films I want to talk about, but they haven't officially announced it. They will be tomorrow. So by the
Okay.
next episode, I can go into further detail. But I was busy with
Yes.
meetings there and voting on certain films, etc. But how about you?
Oh, me? We just survived a strong typhoon. So yeah, a lot of the wind was strong. It shook us. Woke us around 2 a.m. until morning. The power was out for how many days, and still now I don't have the internet. I still don't have any internet connection. I'm using a prepaid internet.
I saw your video where you had your
Yeah.
camera and you were just walking downstairs into the garage area to sort the power out. Then you walked outside, and you went into your car. And because it was like the
Yes.
middle of the night, so you made it look like a first-person horror game or something like Resident Evil 7.
Yeah, I feel like that because I was trying to save my car because the winds are very
Yeah,
strong. So I moved my car back so that the trees might fall. So yeah, I
yeah.
was scared. Yeah. So yeah, without further ado,
Well, at least
let's
you're still here. It's good to know that you survived.
yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. So Adam, can you introduce our guest?
Yes, his name is Jack Perez, and well, I'll just get it over with now. The
Yes.
connection I was referring to is the fact that both me and Rav studied in San Francisco at the Academy of Art
Mm.
University, and
Yes.
Jack was one of our teachers. Although I never got to have a class with him. In fact, we only met
Yes.
briefly one time. But you had at least
Ah,
one, possibly a couple more classes with him.
no, three classes.
3 classes. All right.
Yeah,
But of course,
because
you were focusing on directing, and I was
directing,
focusing on
yes,
screenwriting, and Jack
yes,
was mainly doing the directing classes, I believe.
directing classes. So yeah, without further ado, let's let Jack in. So, hi, Jack.
Hey, Rob. Hey, Adam. How
Hello
are
there.
you?
No,
Pretty
thank
good,
you
thank
for
you.
joining us.
Oh no, my pleasure. It's I'm always up running around at 5:30 in the morning. I am actually. I was saying before we started the show, my cats wake me up at 5 o'clock, so I'm up. So
Yeah.
whether even if I wanted to sleep, I couldn't sleep. So
Very demanding cats.
very,
Yes.
very demanding.
The
Very,
man. I wish my dog died 3 months ago. So
oh, I'm so sorry.
she was like that also. Keep on barking around
Yeah,
5 a.m.
that's their right and our like duty. You know, it's our
Yes.
honor to obey
So
their
yeah.
command. Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Right. That's right.
Whereas I have no pets, so I'm okay.
Yeah,
I don't have a ball and chain.
yeah. It's I mean, it's an amazing thing. It's relationships with animals is an amazing thing. I actually didn't grow up with animals, and it was only when I became a kind of young adult that I start to have animals in my life. And now it's totally inconceivable, even though they do drive you absolutely crazy. Or at least my five are like a gang. You were talking, Adam, that you have this sort of fascination with vigilante. So, and a gang of, and my cat. These cats are like a gang because they're all like street cats and rescues. And they're all kind of crazy. So it's kind of like they're all it's like RoboCop. It's like a psycho gang. They haven't killed. They haven't
so
killed
we need to. Well, maybe me and Rav can work on a script or something about a cyborg dog or something going after cats, and we'll send you the script.
Yeah, Terminator. You got to come up with a cool name for like a Terminator dog title.
Terminator.
What's it?
Terminator.
Terminator. Yeah.
That's gonna be a good one.
Right. Or Dogbot.
RoboCop.
Yeah.
Keep the challenges coming.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, Rob, so you guys are okay, right? I mean, the hurricane's been really bad. I mean, the typhoon's been bad.
Yeah. My mother's house, where the water was around 2 steps in the stairs. So, but it receded very quickly, but it left a lot of debris outside. So yeah.
Aren't people still stranded though in certain parts of the country? Are there still rescue efforts?
Yes, there is in the far north in the Philippines, Cagayan. Yeah. So until now, there's a lot of water because the storm dumped a lot of water.
Right.
So yeah, they're up in the roof. So the rescue effort is in there. Helicopters, crazy.
I'm so sorry. Well, I'm glad your family is okay.
Thank you, Jack. So and it's quite normal here in the Philippines. Every week, what I said with Adam, every time we have this episode, a storm just came by, or the storm was hitting us while we were doing this. So yeah, in a way, this PinoyChap is what you call this, removing my anxiety, my stress.
Good, that's good. I think that we were talking about that. I think that if you're an artist of any kind, if you're a creative person of any kind, then it's like there's a real need to do something creative almost all the time. Otherwise, you start to feel like you're going crazy. So, and I feel like particularly when I'm stressed out, I'll just, it's sometimes easier if you're not working like on an official film. It's easier just to do something creative.
Yes, exactly.
Anything. Like I've been fooling around with, because we use Adobe Premiere a lot as an editing software at the university. But also it's become actually a very popular professional editing platform. Before it used to be Avid and then Final Cut Pro, but Adobe Premiere is now actually pretty popular. And what I discovered a few years ago is that you can actually do very interesting compositing, green screen compositing, and going back to, I'm dating myself now, but like old kind of matte paintings, where basically you matte out a part of the area, you can put in anything you want. And so it's funny, as an old school filmmaker, where those sort of special effects were not available to you unless you went to an optical house to do. Like when I had to do a matte painting back in, like I did a movie, I think trying to find one of the only times I ever did a matte. Do you guys know what a matte painting is?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
RoboCop uses it quite a few times. For
exactly. RoboCop's a spectacular matte painting. In fact, the finale where the it's not Ronnie Cox, it's the stop motion animated
with the really long arms.
Right, with really long arms. Even the downward angle of looking down the skyscraper is a painting. And old school Hollywood, that was usually the technique. If you had a landscape or a castle or anything that you couldn't build, you would paint it and it composite. But that had to be done digitally. I mean, it had to be done optically at a lab, and now you can just do it on your laptop. So anyway, long story short, I'll just start playing around, taking pieces of film and putting them together and making matte paint, just so that I can like de-stress from, because we're going into another lockdown here again, and what's going on with our president that won't leave or won't concede. It's like, for a minute there, we had a moment where everyone was like, "Oh my God, thank God, not 4 more years," and now it's just been days of this madman saying, "I won. I'm not leaving." So all the stress and the COVID and everything is just like,
well, that's what I did during our first. The UK is currently in its second lockdown now for at least another month, but back in the springtime during our first lockdown, I just wrote tons of scripts, tons of feature scripts, pilot scripts, writer's bibles, just for a few ideas, just whatever.
Wow.
Just to keep me occupied, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm jealous because I mean that being able to focus. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like being able to focus on real work, like you're doing, Adam. Is I mean, that's the best use of time, and I wish I had been more. Like I'm almost so stressed about everything that I can't even focus that.
Well, you got a lot of cats to deal with, so no wonder you're too preoccupied.
That's true. That's not even funny. That's true.
Actually, PinoyChap is also a product of that. We were dealing with, Adam and I were dealing a lot of things, and we want to collaborate already. We were doing a film for almost 3 years now, so we're just waiting. So said, why not? We have a talk show or it's a podcast like that. So to work on, and let's collaborate with all our friends, our contacts from different. Since it's a lockdown, so everyone's in their houses.
Right.
So it's easy for them. It's easy for them to share their story and share it to the whole world. Since we can they can watch us anywhere in the world as long as there is Facebook and YouTube. So that's
and PinoyChap's not even our only podcast, because we both have our own individual podcast as well. I do a Jerry Anson themed podcast, and Rav has verified.
It's about cars and gadgets.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that. Well, I know, Rob, you're a car guy. I didn't know, Adam, you said Jerry Anderson, right?
Jerry Anderson, yeah.
So you have a Super Marionation podcast.
I do, yeah. I've all my DVDs are over there, but I can't leave my seat to go and grab them. But yeah, I've got all the DVDs, Thunderbird, Space 1999, you name it.
Fireball XL5,
Supercar, Four Feather Falls, Joe 90. Terrorhawks, one of them.
Yeah, we should talk about that. That's good. I didn't know that. Awesome. That's awesome.
I do have guests on that show as well. So
coming week
I'll
soon.
tell you more about it.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
So Jack, how did you start being a filmmaker? So can you inspire us?
I mean, it's funny because in school, it's funny because I'm still teaching, and I've been teaching over Zoom since September. No, when was it? I can't even remember now. Since last March, and I'll get into classes, and sometimes I don't know why certain students decided to go to film school, and I'll ask that question. Like, what is it? Was there a particular film? Was there a particular moment where you were so inspired that you wanted to do something? And for me, it was interesting because my father is a confirmed movie geek. Like he's the guy that he really loved movies. And I don't know about your fathers, but my father wasn't particularly communicative. He wasn't expressive with his affection. It wasn't easy for him as a Latin male raised very traditionally. He wasn't very but through movies, that's how sort of we communicated. So it was like something we could share. So he loved to show me movies, classic Hollywood movies. And it was a time when pre even VCRs, before you could tape anything, this is in the early 70s, where he would like wake me up in the middle of the night and say, "Come downstairs. They're showing The Third Man on television, at 4 a.m, like, because in those days something aired and it never, you had to see it, you had to be there to see it. So I think it was through him that I started to, have a love for cinema. So I saw a lot of movies before I went to film school. And then in that period, and again, this is the 70s, if you've seen the movie Super 8, which is not a great movie, but it does capture a very particular time in the 70s where kids were making their own films with basically with their parents' home movie cameras. The equivalent of a home video camera in the 70s was a Super 8 movie camera.
Yes.
So you would, if you had an inclination to make a movie, you would just basically borrow your family camera and start screwing around. And that's what I started to do with my sister. I would always cast my sister in little monster movies. I mean, I see a lot of bloody pictures. Always pouring blood all over my sister, and having her be a mummy or having her be a giant Godzilla creature that stomps on a miniature city. Whatever I was doing, I was copying sort of those fantasy and science fiction horror movies that I was watching, and then it just became sort of an obsession. I think that's the thing. I think like real filmmakers, at a certain point, it just starts to become the only thing you can really think about doing. So it was. So when I heard that there were film schools and there was a way to sort of train to do it professionally, that was the next step. So I went to film school, and ultimately, after film school, moved to Hollywood, like you were supposed to do. That was the rule then. Go to Hollywood, and started to look for work. So that was sort of the process of getting there.
Okay.
But when I got there, just like most people, it wasn't like, "Hey, come make movies." It was not like, "Hey, here's a job." You sort of had to figure it out.
Yes, it's different. It's like fantasy.
Well, it is. I mean, I think there is a relationship between Hollywood, the idea of Hollywood, and even something like Las Vegas. This idea of you can go there and you can maybe get rich, or in Hollywood you can maybe get rich and famous, and you can maybe, and that can be true, but it's not a sure thing.
Yes,
and it requires a lot of
determination.
And patience, which I never really had a lot of, and luck, and like just like Las Vegas, and luck was a huge part of it. But part of it also, at least at that period, had to do with just being there. You just had to kind of be there and try every conceivable way of getting in. And but truthfully, it's funny you mentioned this, because there was a period, I kind of jumped ahead. There was a period when I graduated film school in New York before I moved to California, where I was making industrial films. So you talked about doing commercials and things like that. I was doing, because there really was no dramatic narrative film market in New York. So before I moved, I was doing travel films and travel logs, and I shot jewelry. Like, have you ever seen the Jewelry Channel where the jewelry rotates? And I did every kind of sort of industrial sort of documentary just to make some money and keep learning how to make film. And but it was a process. It took a while. It took a while to finally. I think it wasn't. I didn't make my first feature film until 1990. So that was about. I mean, it was pretty. We were talking about timing. It was actually a pretty short period of time. I was very lucky. About 2 years after I graduated, I was able to make a feature film.
Just looking at your IMDb, the first film that you're credited as director was America's Deadliest Home Video. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, that's right. That was a film, and that was a low. I mean, when I say it wasn't like feature film, like here's a big Hollywood movie. It was, I was basically unemployed in Los Angeles, and was introduced to a guy who was an out of work actor. He was an actor kind of producer who couldn't get. He booked a few jobs, but he wasn't really making any money. And he had the idea of, well, which a lot of actors do, which is actually very smart, which is like, well, if nobody's going to cast me, then why don't I produce a movie where I can cast myself? you know, and in that way, I'll have a part, you know, I'll have a bigger part maybe. And so he scraped together $7,000 on credit cards. And we met, and he said, if you can write and direct a movie that has, you know, a certain amount of violence, a certain amount of sex, a certain amount of horror in it, because this was at the time where the home video market was actually still booming, and a place to get independent film seen. If it was a genre movie, he said, I can't pay you, but I'll produce the movie, and the only go, so I'll pay for the movie, which I was like, all right, you know, great. But the caveat is that I have to be one of the leads in it. And I was like, okay, who cares? You know, it's like I was over 2 years where I couldn't get a job making Xeroxes or pouring coffee. I'll take it. But the thing about that movie is that the budget was so low that we couldn't shoot on film. And so the only option in 1990 was to shoot on video. And there's a whole term, SOV, shot on video, horror movies and thrillers from that period. But I was obsessed with the look of film, and I couldn't possibly see how to make a film traditionally on video without it really looking horrible. So I basically, it forced me as a writer to come up with an idea where the look of the video, which was the format we were shooting on, would be an inherent part of the story. And so what resulted was one of the very first, what is now called a found footage movie. So recently, America's Deadliest home video has been sort of rediscovered. In fact, it's playing on Alamo on demand now. Alamo Draft House were one of the sort of supporters that revived the movie and said this is a very early example of what became very popular later on with the Blair Witch Project and Cloverfield and all those movies. But it was sort of a device that I used to make my first feature, and it got me a little bit of attention. It got me a little bit of, at least in the independent film circles, it was a pretty new idea. And so that was sort of the beginning that helped me start to get paying jobs. But again, it was very gradual. It wasn't like I made this independent movie and then suddenly somebody threw $50 million into my lap. It was sort of like a very incremental sort of stepping stone. But I think what was important about it, and I still look upon that for inspiration, was when I wasn't being hired to do something, at least I had help in finding a way to do it myself. In other words, it was self-started. It wasn't about waiting for someone to give you, a bunch of money. It was about like, well, if you're going to do it, then just find a way to do it, even if it's only for a little bit of money. Find a way to do it, And I think that option is even more available now to young filmmakers, particularly with the kind of editing and camera equipment that's available to you. It's like you can do it if you have the courage and the will to do it.
Yes, true. So yeah, now it's a whole new ball game also because of everything is done digitally and with your phone you can
make it on your phone.
You can make a film in your phone like now.
They even have like film festivals like accepting like the entire film festival is about movies made on phones, things like that, like mobile phone film festival or whatever, something like that.
I don't think it matters. I mean, now like with the 12, and I'm sure in a couple of years it'll be like, there'll be an 8K phone or something, who knows, but I think that one of the important things is that even though the technology is really of a high level, much higher than most young filmmakers had even 10 years ago to start making movies with, it still comes down to the quality of the story. You know what I mean? Like I don't even think that the technology, like, I remember in film school, you would screen, I'm sure you had this experience at our school, like you're watching other people's work, you're watching what they've made. And some things are very, very slick and can be very, very slickly made or produced with a lot of money. But I remember in my film school seeing films that were out of focus and, underexposed or overexposed or even because they were cut on film, they sometimes you'd have fingerprints and dirt, and it wouldn't even matter if the story was strong. There's something that's And we were talking about this before the show started, that if everybody has this incredible tool, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have a story, to say. And the true filmmakers will take advantage of the relatively inexpensive technology to tell the story they want to tell. You know what I mean? And then it won't matter. It doesn't really matter what you make it on, because if the story's working, you don't care. You're not like, oh, like, nobody watches a movie and goes, this is an amazing movie made on a phone. It's either an amazing movie or it's not an amazing
exactly
movie.
True, exactly.
So I think that's actually a hopeful thing. But I think as Charlie Chaplin said, just coming up with the idea was the hardest part. You know what I mean? That's the hardest part. Like it's not about how to make. I mean, people are like, how do you make a movie? Well, it's actually coming up with something that you want to do is harder than anything. I think harder than anything else.
Yes. So we have a saying here in the Philippines. It's all about the engine, not the arrow.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. No, go ahead.
Because some people are buying here in the Philippines. There was a time DSLR was the rave, so people are buying DSLRs, and still if they shot, everything is in auto mode. So yeah, they can. So how about the old photographers who has good in composition and everything. So they're just using a cell phone.
Right.
What happened? Why my camera this is an expensive camera. So it's everything. They always say that it's in the engine, not the arrow.
Yeah. That's true. Well, it's that's what I mean. It's like, it's very weird because iPhone is selling. When you look at the marketing of something like the iPhone 12, it's like the iPhone Pro. Like if you buy the thing, suddenly you're a professional, or it just makes you into a professional. And the only thing that makes you into a professional is experience.
Yeah,
true. And doing it. And so, like you said, like an experienced artist, the power of their tool, meaning their experience, surpasses any technology that you have. So,
if you rely, no, you finish.
No, go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say that, and also if you're relying too much on the camera, the technology, you end up with something that is style over substance, really. And also, if everyone is getting the latest camera or whatever, every film's going to look the same, basically. So that's a way of standing out.
Yeah, I think it's true anyway. Well, I mean, look at even if you look at photography this way. I mean, photography used to be like when I went to film school, the first class that they gave us was a still photography class. Again, this was still in a period where film was the motion picture film was the medium, but they were training you to understand film and to understand just photography in general before you even moved on to moving pictures. Understand the power of a single composition. Understand exposure, understand how to even develop film. We had to develop our own film to get a picture to look like something. Took an enormous amount of calculation and technique, and you had to make a beautiful looking picture. I'm doing this too much. I don't know why I keep making quotation marks. But to make a good looking picture took an enormous amount of effort. And my early pictures look like shit. It's just like, it's not easy to take a good picture. You have to, but now it's like you can take a lousy picture more or less. And I'm beginning to sound like an old man, but if you using a variety of applications will make anything look professional, so what you get is this, like you were saying, Adam, this sort of polished pseudo, or what we perceive to be professional, but really if everything looks like that, and moreover, if everybody can do it, if a 5-year-old can turn a junky picture into something that looks like a magazine, then what does that mean? It devalues it. So there has to be, so it has to be something else other than the the look of something for it to be valuable. And I think that's always been the case. It's just that now it becomes even more important that the content of something, even the content of a single picture, is more important than the so-called professional quality, because the professional quality is on tap. You can just hit a button and it's automatically professional looking.
Yes.
But what is it? What is it? And so it's an interesting time, to where I think maybe we'll even go back to, it would be interesting if we ended up going back to a time where almost the technology goes in the other direction and the content, if you look at the films that came out of this end of the Second World War, particularly, the Italian neorealist films, and obviously Bicycle Thieves and films like, by Vittorio De Sica and so forth, where they didn't have any money because they didn't even have studios or lights to photograph. The Italians didn't have the ability to make the films like they used to before the war. We're just making them outside with whatever equipment and whatever film stock they could scrabble together. Suddenly you had like these real humanistic stories that had nothing to do necessarily with the slickness, but everything to do with the humanity of it. So again, it just comes back to the idea, like what's worth making a movie about,
True.
and it doesn't have to be, I don't think it has to be noble in its story. I think it just has to be something you love, like Adam, you were talking, like you guys have this love for these vigilante pictures, which is a long tradition of vigilante pictures. And if you love a type of movie that much that you want to bring your own spin to it, then that's that's noble enough, because you're pursuing that has to be the thing that I think that's what it comes down to is, if whatever you're going to make, I think you have to be so passionate about it that you're able to sustain the obstacles that generally come with making a movie, which are many, which is whether getting the money or getting the actors or finishing the script or getting the crew together. It's just like if you've seen the great documentary Lost in La Mancha, which is about Terry Gilliam trying to make the first time he tried to make his Don Quixote epic. Everything that possibly can go wrong goes wrong. With weather and cast being injured and money, and the whole thing. So making a movie is a huge challenge. You have to have something that's going to, like a crusader. Like you can't live, unless you finish it.
Just true. So it's so you were lucky that in just 2 years you made your own.
Now that I think about it, it was a very short period of time before I was able to make. But then it was another 5 years after that before I made my next feature. And in those 5 years, I was working, just trying to get the next thing going. And I was doing a lot of behind the scenes documentaries, like the making of. I got a job because of it's a weird thing how thing works, because I went to LA, I went to Hollywood, I couldn't get a job. Then I met a guy. Like I said, this actor who wasn't from LA. Nobody's from LA, lives in LA. He was from Wisconsin. And he said, let's go to Wisconsin and make America
far away.
Yeah, he was like, we'll go. Think about this practically. He was like, look, he goes, in Wisconsin, even if we're making a $7,000 movie, it'll be a big deal to everybody who lives there. It's a small town in Wisconsin, and everyone will treat us like we're big shots. And they'll give us free locations, they'll give us free lunches, and they'll think it's a big deal. So that was very practical. And he said, also, my dad used to be the sheriff there, so we can blow stuff up and it'll be fine. We can shoot off guns and there won't be permits. I mean, using blanks, of course. And it was like the practical way to make a movie, a low-budget movie, was to make it where you have the support. So that's why it's not necessarily so funny. Like, it came to Hollywood, and the first feature I made, I drove halfway across the country to make them a little bit of town. But when I came back to LA, I went in for a job interview, and they said, "What have you been doing?" And I said, "Well, I just finished this feature." And they said, "Really? What's it about?" And the guy that owned this production company that I was interviewing for, that made all these behind the scenes documentaries, which was new at the time, where you would do the making of a Spielberg film, or the making, and now it's on every movie, but then it was pretty new. And he said, well, what do you, I showed him the movie, and he was like, wow, this is really cool. He said, maybe we could kind of spin this off into a TV show, because he had a deal with a television network. And he was like, maybe you can work with me but meanwhile, how about, you're a pretty good director, how about you work for us doing these behind the scenes documentaries? So it was weird. It was like this one thing opened this door. And then for years, I worked at this one production company, making hundreds of these behind the scenes documentaries to stay alive, and watching other directors. So in the 90s, I was on the sets of, we were talking about this, Adam, I was on the set of The Shadow and The Flintstones and John Woo's first movie, Hard Target, and Dazed and Confused and Grumpy Old Men and Carlito's Way, and on and on and on. And it was a fascinating sort of graduate school, because I was able to observe, while I was doing these documentaries, all these directors doing their thing. And I was able to kind of use what I had learned in film school and sort of put that together with how other filmmakers were doing it, whether it was working with actors or how they worked with the cinematographer, or what their demeanor on set was like. And I was able to sort of fuse that with what I had learned. And I started that. It was a continuing part of my education. But again, it wasn't until almost 5 years after I made America's Deadliest Home Video that I made my next feature. And sometimes it's there would be, I think when one year I made 2 movies, which is never happened again. I think in 1 year I managed two projects came together, and I thought that was that was an amazing, talk about luck. But generally it's several years between projects, and you have to find a way of staying alive and staying creative. And so if it's taking a long time to get your thing going, don't feel that you're missing it somehow, because it always takes a long time. In fact, I've been planning. I mean, this last movie I've been trying to make, it's been now, it's been another five years since I was ready to do it. I'm still hoping to do it, but so it goes back to what I was saying before about you need to keep having that thing to push you forward.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not even the same idea. There have been many times where, I've tried to get a movie made, and it was the movie that I was dying to make, and it couldn't be made for whatever reason. So you put it aside, and you do something else, and maybe you come back to it. Maybe you come back to it later.
Actually, you mentioned that doing BTS. So actually, you mentioned that before in the class. So actually, I use that, because I always volunteer myself in AAU to be a behind the scenes director during the projects of my classmates, so I can observe and learn from them and what their mistakes are, so I can apply it in my own. So the reason that I got a lot of inspirations because of all of my classmates, and doing BTS also with your project, Where's Roman, and with the other one, the
Fair Force 5?
Right.
No, Free Fall.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm just double checking IMDb.
so yeah, that it made I observe how you do it, and how you I learned a lot from you and Maxwell also. So
right, yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, it's just watching, and now it's now there's so much sort of behind the scenes stuff available. It's look, I mean, there's no substitute for actually doing it, and that's the only. I mean, that's the only way you become a filmmaker, is by making it. And the first thing that you make, or the first thing that you write, is not necessarily going to be the best thing, but it's a necessary step. You have to do that project so that you can do the next project and do the next. And that's why so many filmmakers hate looking at their own work, because and then that's the law. Like most filmmakers directors don't watch their movies after they make them, because
Yes.
for one reason, you're just sick of looking at it because you've been dealing with it for so long.
Yes.
And the other reason is that all you can see is all the terrible mistakes you've made.
I've been there.
You know, how could I have written that, or why did I do that? And you just see it as a series of mistakes.
Yes.
And the fact is that you're always going to be doing that. I mean, every project you work on, it should be hopefully some sort of development, some sort of improvement in your ability. Otherwise, what's the point? It's like
True.
I think every artist is always looking to discover something that's going to advance their technique,
skills. Yeah,
something. Otherwise, you're just.
And you don't want to hit it high straight away, otherwise you're Orson Welles with Citizen Kane.
Right.
The bar's too high.
That's true. But what I think is interesting, it's like, have you read? Well, there was a book on The Other Side of the Wind, the making of The Other Side of the Wind, that was Orson Welles' last movie. He died while he was still making it, and there was a Netflix finally released, I guess, 2 years ago. The version of The Other Side of the Wind. He didn't obviously finish it because he's been long dead, but other people, Peter Bogdanovich got together and cut it together. Yes. But it was interesting because Orson Welles, with his last movie, was making the most experimental, talk about guerrilla style, independent movie. I mean, he was shooting it himself, 16 millimeter, shooting it in a way that was, he was shooting it, talk about like before found footage. I mean, he was trying to do, it's like a mix of essentially documentary and narrative. And he was constantly playing with and people were like, what are you doing? And it was on the surface, it was the opposite of the slickness of the Hollywood films, and certainly Citizen Kane. And yet you could tell this was a man who was like constantly trying to like use the medium to find something, to do something different, to break through to something. And I think about that, sometimes it's like, I know how to do it now. So now I should probably try to challenge myself and see if I can think of another way of doing it, but it takes years to get to a place where you can, where you can kind of play like jazz. It's funny, like I use this in school a lot. Like when you're learning music, you have to read the note of music and then you play the note, and then you're reading and then, at a certain point, years later, you're not thinking about it anymore. You're just playing it, right? So I think writing is the same way. It's any art is like that. You like learn the technique and then it becomes like embedded. True. Like when you play a video game, like have you ever stopped and asked yourself when you're playing a video game, why is it my fingers are doing, like how do they know where to go? Like how do they, when you're playing a video game with a controller, your hands are going crazy.
Yeah.
It's an incredible combination of, like you're doing all this stuff. And if you stop and look at it objectively, it's like, how does my hands know how to do that? It's simply because you've been doing this for hours and hours and hours.
Second nature, yes.
Second nature, it's exactly like that. So there's a second nature component to cinema. I think the problem with it is that it usually takes. It's not like something. Well, it is now. It is something you could kind of pick up and do every day, but it used to be that you would have to wait to get behind the camera. So there's a rusty sort of period where you start to like almost like an athlete that isn't training, and then you have to like if it's years before you find. So I always try to find a way to keep shooting and editing something, even if it's just my cats.
Yes.
Just so that you can kind of keep the wheels oiled.
So what led you to becoming a teacher of filmmaking? What led you in that direction?
That's a good question, Adam. My mother was a teacher, and she wasn't a teacher of film, but she was she was a early education teacher. But I think it was probably the combination of my love of film history and also just maybe what I inherited from my mother in terms of being able to hopefully communicate. Because I would be on sets making my films, and at lunchtime when everyone's sort of lying around, I would sort of, I don't know how it happened, but I would start to probably to the annoyance of the crew, I would hold these like sort of impromptu lectures on whatever it was. Now, we could have a whole lecture on vigilante cinema, and we could just go down that rabbit hole. And I found that I just had this interest in communicating. I think it goes back to, again, it's like if you love something that much, you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I think that was sort of the thinking, and I thought that maybe I would become a teacher way later in my career, but it just so happened that sort of the timing again worked out, where I was introduced to the school that you guys we all were at, the Academy of Art, and it turns out that their policy was to hire working filmmakers or working directors to teach. And so that opportunity, where literally I would fly up to San Francisco, and I was still flying up until February. Was it February or March? I was still flying up until March of last year. When the pandemic happened, it was just an opportunity to continue to sort of express my love of movies, hopefully, and also maybe add some things that my own professors didn't have. Because I think one of the things that happens in most education is that your professors don't have as much life experience in the field that they're instructing you on. You know what I mean? It's like, because most of the way academia works is that you go to graduate school in whatever subject it is, and then you go to teaching, and you never really necessarily go into the industry. Go into the industry. And I had some teachers who did, but it was usually very small. So conversely, I think it can work against you sometimes, depending on the teachers you get, because just because you are a professional doesn't mean you know how to communicate to students what that thing is. It's like, just because you can write or read or write doesn't mean you can teach English necessarily. You know what I mean? So I think that I was lucky that I had some ability that I'm sure came from my mother that just made it a sort of a natural fit. But I love doing it because, like I said, it's an easy way to continue expressing myself about cinema and hopefully inspire other directors and give them some information that they wouldn't otherwise know.
Shape the next generation. I get you.
Yeah, like Rob, it was like a huge, like for me, like when Robian did his thesis film.
Christmas bonus.
I mean, I was so moved by that. I was so I mean, he knows this. I mean, I was so moved, and I wasn't the only one. I was just. It was great because it was like such a perfect example of sort of the soul of the artist coming out into the movie. Rob is such a, I mean, the expression blowing smoke, I'm not meaning to blow smoke, but there are not a lot of very, anybody who knows Rob, he's just enormously warm, loving, with just a lot of love in him. And that comes out in that movie. And that's sort of what we were talking about before. It's like there's an intangible, I mean, it's very well made. It's an impressive technically movie. I mean, it's a very professional movie, but more importantly, it's like you as an artist, your soul is in that movie. You know what I mean? And that's like undeniable. And I think that's what's missing from so many movies. I mean, you watch a slick Marvel movie or anything, like you'll watch a movie and it'll be like, yeah, that was slick, and maybe that was even exciting, but it doesn't necessarily touch you. Which is what, even a good genre movie should do. RoboCop is moving, you know what I mean? RoboCop is great for a lot of reasons, but RoboCop, going back to vigilante movies, I'm sorry, we were talking about this before. The reason why RoboCop is so effective is because it actually has a heart. That's what's so powerful. It's the most violent thing you've ever seen, and it's crazy. The humor is crazy black humor, and it's
got the satire and everything, especially in the late 80s.
Right. But at the core of it is a man whose life has been this. He's trying to find his identity. That's what it's about. You know what I mean? And Peter Weller's performance is a soulful performance, and that's like. That's the key to the movie. Like if you didn't have that, it would just be another sort of wild sci-fi shoot 'em up.
Just a B movie, definitely.
Yeah. So I think it's the heart of the thing is what's, and that's a hard thing to put your finger on sometimes. You're like, well, what is the what is the soul of the movie, and I think that's probably what gives it its most value, even if it's a horror movie, even if it's a an action movie, you know. So I'm sorry we got off the track, but what I was saying is that it was great to see. I don't think it was anything I did as a teacher, but it was just great to see, you know, like Rav put all of this himself in and something so striking, you know. So
yeah, the passion, yes. Yeah, if it comes off on screen, then obviously, Rav did a good job. If everyone else can feel it,
that's all you can hope for, you know. Like, and your film, Rav, stands out amongst, you know, the hundreds of, you know, films that I've seen at the school or any school. You know, I've always been like, wow, that's a real movie. You know, that's a real movie. And so anyway, it's
I'm flattered.
yeah.
And thanks to you, Jack, and the rest of the teachers like David Morris, Donna, helped me a lot in creating Christmas bonus at that time. And I got pieces of you, your techniques, because I was observing everyone.
Right.
I really love to observe a lot of people. You know, how do you do to create movies? So I was observing everyone, how they do this and what will fit into me. So what I'm and yeah and in writing those stories like Christmas bonus, also David Morris was also telling me a lot of things to change it to make it way better than the first time I wrote it. So yeah, that's why I was so inspired with all of you in AAU, especially you, Jack. And I was always asking for your advice in every step in a way, and you helped me in a way when I was looking back at my photos and my videos when I was in AAU. The first time I directed, I was so nervous, scared. But you helped me. You helped me with that, and now until now, I still bring it here. Even talking to a lot of people, like even politicians, and they want to make a show. I brought that with me, the things that I learned.
It's your calling card, basically.
Yes,
that's great. Well, that makes me really happy. Yeah, I think it's weird. It's like teaching is one of these things where, in many ways, it's like directing, because people think directing is about creating every moment, and it's almost impossible to create every, even if you're like the most neurotic Stanley Kubrick type, which I am. I mean, like you want every little thing you want it to be, but in many ways, it's completely impractical. You have to. What's more important is that you set a particular tone, or it's like you strike a particular note, and if you set actors or you know, in terms of the like designing, we talk a lot about visual design, you know, and like designing your shots, and once you sort of set the tone of something, it's easier for people, whether it's actors or cinematographers or any kind of crew, to sort of get on that track, because you understand what the feel of the thing is supposed to be. And teaching, I think, is the same way. I think that if you can kind of get some sort of essence from a teacher, and it somehow makes sense to you. Like I think students are always looking for, well, what's the right way to do it? And with anything artistic, it's like, well, it's very subjective. In other words, it's not like whether it's right or wrong. It's whether or not it makes sense to you. So as a student, I think it's healthy to the expression is cherry pick what your teachers say. It's like, well, what he said about that makes sense to me, and I'll put that in my box. But what he said about that, I don't. But then this teacher, that thing makes sense, and so you sort of collect. You know, and it doesn't matter whether it's in writing or or directing or whatever it is, editing. It's like you collect what like makes sense to you, and then and going back to what you were saying earlier about observing other directors or other artists, you just continually sort of collect these concepts that fit your personality or your essence as and that becomes who you are. That becomes your thing. And I had one teacher in film school who had an enormous impact on me. And he said, I told you, I'm sure I told you this in class. He started to talk to me about subjectivity and how funneling a story through a particular character's point of view can be an enormous influence on how a movie looks and how it feels, and the difference between looking at a story as a director objectively, meaning watching the story unfold, or taking on the role of a character. And I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but like when you're reading a book, it's either Jack woke up in the morning, he went down and had breakfast, he found a decapitated head in his refrigerator, or it's I woke up, I went downstairs, it was cold, I put my slippers. In other words, you either put the audience inside the head of a character, or perhaps you're watching the action unfold. One is not better than the other, but if you apply that concept to like how you shoot something, it can change a whole movie. You take the same script and like take on the perspective. Anyway, this idea was like, when I was a student, I was like, because I said, well, what's the right way to shoot something? It's like, you can shoot it from any angle. You can do it from every shot. Like, what's the way through? And he said, well, whose story is it? Who's your most important character? Who do you want the audience? And I was like, oh my, so funny. It was like years and years later, one of my movies, I think it was my third film feature, was screening in New York. And I invited my old professor. It was very important to me that he come see the screening because I wanted his approbation. I wanted him to say, good job, and I really wanted his, and he came, and it was really lovely. And it was funny. I said to him in a private moment, I said, I just want to tell you that this thing that you told me, when I was like a junior or whatever, sophomore, stayed with me my whole life. And I use this in everything that I do now and everything. And it was so funny. He kind of looked at me and he goes, did I say that? And I said, yeah, you said this whole thing about subjectivity and whose character. And he was like, really? Oh, cool. Okay, good. And it was kind of like this thing that is the, like sort of this guiding principle. And it was like and it was only one idea, said one was 5 minutes, but so sometimes, that's all you can hope for in an education, is to get a couple of sort of nuggets of what you perceive to be wisdom or something that illuminates or just opens your mind. And it can, so I try to be that, I try to be the teacher that I would want to have, as a student. I don't know if I'm successful at it, but I try to be that. So.
You are successful. I was inspired at that time.
I'm glad.
A lot of my classmates are also inspired. That's why they want to be in your class before and learn a lot of things. Even the actors, like Camille, if you remember Camille.
Oh, of course, yeah.
She was so inspired with you at that time.
I'm glad. Yeah,
you're different from the others.
Well, I think teaching is funny because it's like, the joke is that I guess a bad teacher is someone who just recites information. You know what I mean? Like any teacher can just, you just recite it. And it's funny because there are teachers, not necessarily at the school, but anywhere that I've met, that are not, I never understood this. There are teachers that are not into the thing that they're teaching about. They're not excited by what they're teaching about. They're doing it for other reasons. And I understand that. I mean, there's some people teach because, that's their job and that's why they make money. But I think it's a really bad, it's unfortunate that there are those teachers, because that's not how information penetrates. I mean, I think it's absolutely necessary for a teacher to be a nerd about, like a geek about what they're talking about, because that's how that transmits. If you're just going blah, 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 like you have to be like excited about the thing that you're teaching about. Otherwise, who cares? Why are you listening? So I think that's why. And look, we've all had teachers, whether in high school or whatever. You're sitting in class and you're like,
Yeah.
it's like that's part of it. I think because my wife was talking about like, she had a math teacher that even though like I suck at math, I hate math, I'm no good at it. I'm no good, and we were kind of talking about, well, maybe you didn't have the right teacher, and so it may not even be necessarily about the subject. It may be about who's communicating that subject's information, and with how much going back to love, how much love is really coming out of that person talking about whatever they're talking about. That makes all the difference, whether you understand it or not. I think how you're engaged, you'll be engaged by somebody who has that love. Otherwise, it's just it's just noise.
I completely agree. It was the exact same reaction I had when I did my bachelor's degree in the UK. It was all theory-based stuff, so we just sat in front of a screen, and the teacher just do a PowerPoint slideshow, just telling us about the theories. And I mean, that has its uses, of course, but after that, I didn't do anything for about 3 years. I just got stuck in a daytime job and whatnot. And then I went to San Francisco to study, and I was surprised at how pretty much every classes I took was all practical. And I learned a hell of a lot more by doing the stuff rather than just being told what to do.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing too. I think about that sometimes because I lecture quite a bit. I mean, there are classes like we had, Rob, that are definitely production oriented, where you're shooting all the time. And then there are lecture theory classes where, you look at other film directors and how they've used particular techniques and why. And I enjoyed doing those lecture classes as much as I enjoyed doing the production classes. But I do think that at a certain point, it's like for that stuff, the conceptual stuff to truly penetrate, you have to do it. You have to actually do, like one of my favorite classes that I teach is in directing is that I lecture on a particular directorial technique, something that you wouldn't even think about, like the use of a close-up. Like something you don't even think like a director. Well, you get a close-up because you get a close-up. But like if you really look at like the history of the close-up and how different directors have used the close-up and what does a close-up do and how do you strategically apply a close-up and things like that. And then the homework assignment is, okay, based on these like 4 principles of how to use a close-up, go make a film executing that particular concept. Then the theory is put into practice immediately, and then you can sort of make that sort of connection. But somebody talks to you about writing, a particular style of writing or a particular form of written expression, and then you don't go and actually do that. It remains conceptual, and I don't think it ultimately is, like you said, it's not practical. It's an idea, and you have to do it. So it's like anything. Going back to me playing musical instruments, like you just got to keep playing it for it to be something that you can ultimately become comfortable, or and then skilled maybe at,
I think I'm going to say how much longer have we got, Rav, before we go over? We don't want to go over time, obviously, but we've got enough time still.
We have time still, yes. We can.
Well, I'll quickly ask this one thing, because me and Rav were talking about Ray Harryhausen last night, because he mentioned that you talked about him quite a lot in classes. I take it's monster movies. Is that your personal favorite genre?
It's funny because I'm looking at all these clips and I'm seeing all these bloody monsters, people torn apart, and I have done a fair amount of those things, and I wasn't really inspired by Ray Harryhausen's stop motion sort of animation maestro and Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and Jason the Argonauts and Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and on and on and on. Those early stop motion films, animated fantasy films, were like a huge influence on me as a young filmmaker. And my early Super 8 movies, a lot of them had animation. I ultimately had the chance to do a movie using stop motion animation in a feature film called Monster Island, which is, I think it's now back on Amazon Prime, but it's a movie I made in 2004 with Adam West and Carmen Electra and Mary Elizabeth Winstead and all these crazy cast. But the concept was to make an old-fashioned monster movie using stop motion animated monsters, which at the time was no one was doing that. So it's sort of a comedy monster movie, but still I had a whole team of stop motion animators up in Vancouver building miniature sets, and I had stop motion gigantic praying mantises and ants, and it was sort of a Valentine to those movies. So I was really lucky, because talk about like having a real love of those movies, and then somehow through a lot of perseverance being able to actually make a film using that was like a real joy. But it's a lost art form in many ways. I mean, it comes up occasionally. People like Wes Anderson, people like that resurrected, and certainly Tim Burton. But it's Harryhausen was a huge influence, not in my generation, even in previous generations. You talk to like people like John Landis, who produced my film Some Guy Who Kills People. Like Landis is influenced by Ray Harryhausen, Joe Dante. All these guys are like completely obsessed with his work. And so this is some stuff from Monster Island. It's all these creatures were not digital. These were actually models, miniatures, and
practical effects.
And again, that praying mantis was like a foot tall. That's a miniature jungle. So it was about trying to capture a particular look that I remember. And it's certainly not a realistic look. It's a fantastical, unrealistic, sort of dreamlike sort of quality to animation. But I loved it. I just loved it. And and I think it's just the kind of thing that again, if you love something that much, ultimately a type of movie, if you're lucky enough, you'll find a way to bring that into your own work. So
because there's something about stop motion animation when it's juxtaposed with live action, it has that unnatural jerky motion, which adds a bit more to the horror factor. Because again, going back to RoboCop, the Ed 209 robot, and also the Terminator with the endoskeleton at the very end, it just doesn't match the natural movement of humans, which again helps add to the eerie vibe of the scene.
Yeah, it's funny you put it that way. It's true. It's like when it's funny because it's like in films like even John Carpenter's The Thing, they had done some stop motion animation in that movie for the end that they ended up cutting out precisely because of what you're talking about, is that the Carpenter felt it didn't necessarily mesh with the Rob Bottin special makeup effects. But I think that I kind of like that sort of unreal quality of it when you mix it in like you're seeing now. It's like Ray Harryhausen put it in an interesting way. Toward the end of his career, they asked him about CGI, and they asked him like what he felt about CGI versus physical stop motion animation. And he said there's something about stop motion that approaches like a dream, like almost like the way your brain processes a fantastical thing. It's like it's not real. And he said it almost like CGI, as beautiful as it can be, is too smooth. It doesn't tap that same sort of thing in your brain. And I think that's the thing. It's like you look at stop motion and you're like, well, that's not real, and yet it's a physical object that's moving of its own accord, and it's been photographed. It's not doesn't exist in a computer. It's been physically photographed with light hitting it. So how is that possible? And I do think that sort of has this, and so I think that's why it works so well for monster movies and fantasy films, because it's the nature of it is unreal. So why not? But it's it's a very cool technique.
Now you mention it. Actually, that's what you're selling, Jack. Is I was watching a documentary about Lego Movie this afternoon. So everybody was asking if Lego Movie was CGI or stop motion, but it's a CGI that looks like a stop motion, because the production crew wants it looks, because the first in the 1950s, I think 60s, that kids were doing stop motion movies with their Legos. So they just copied that to that movie. So, and I really like the look and view of Lego movies. I was so fascinated. Everything was in Lego, and I was so. At first, I was thinking that's definitely stop motion because all of the details are there. But
Right.
suddenly, it's a CGI that meant to be look like.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's good. I mean, I like the Lego movies too because they do have that quality. And I think the other thing is that there's a difference between like in a Lego movie,
Mhm.
you can create an actual Lego character and render that in a computer, and you're taking, and I'm pretty sure they do this when it's basically the character work is, it's not like you have to draw Lego. You have a Lego, you have physical Legos that you can scan and manipulate in a computer. So you're taking a real object and you're essentially in a computer version photographing it and putting it into a cyberspace to manipulate. There's a difference between doing that and taking something that has never existed and creating it electronically.
Yes.
And I think that, but anyway, regardless of that, I think that there's a handmade, literally a handmade. I'm doing it again with the fingers.
Well, you are using your hands, so it makes sense in this regard.
but there is a handmade quality that comes from stop motion animation, where because the animator is physically manipulating, moving the object, that transmits into that work. And I think it goes back to what we were saying about like soul and heart. Even though it sounds pretentious, it's like you can feel the hand of the animator. And maybe that's not, you can certainly say that the hand of an animator in a CGI thing, a good animator, is in there. But there is something that I think an audience can recognize in stop motion where it feels like, somebody has touched it, and that has a certain warmer, has a warmth to it that maybe other special effects don't have, So I think we're moved in storytelling by things that touch us in a human way, even if it is fantastical or terrifying or whatever. There has to be like a link. And I think the more surface the work becomes, the less you're connected to it. This is really what it is. I mean, you're either moved by a movie or you're not moved by a movie. And I think the more slick something is, even though it may appear to be professional, is not the answer. It's not the answer to making something that resonates, meaning it's something that you remember. Like we're still talking about RoboCop. Like, why are we still talking about RoboCop? It's like there's some sort of alchemy happened in that makes it resonate. And ultimately, I think that's what you want from a movie. That's the thing. It's like a movie is supposed to be a permanent. It's not a play. It doesn't disappear. It's supposed to be there to be revisited. So maybe, hopefully, you make something that somebody wants to go back to. Maybe that's the goal, is to make something that somebody is worth returning to.
Yes.
I think is sort of like the thing you hope for. So.
Yes, couldn't agree more.
Right.
Yeah. So, Jack, are you doing some projects now?
Yeah, it's like we said, it's like everything is taking longer, and it's certainly taking longer than it has in the past. But yeah, I have a couple of projects. I have one that I've been working on that's sort of well, it's not sort of, it is. It's a fusion of my love of film noir with my love of animal rights and animal rights activism, and sort of a story. It's sort of a violent modern private eye story that involves animal rights activism. And it's something that I wrote several years ago, and I almost got made a couple of years ago, and then the financing fell apart. So it's something that I want to return to and get going. It's a project called Search and Rescue. And that's like a really personal movie that I feel like I need to make somehow. And then there's always so that's
Good luck with it. Yes.
yeah, that's the movie I really want to get going. And but it's been weird now. It's like, I don't know how much time we have left, but it's like we've been doing at the school, I was telling you, Rob, it's like we can't even necessarily even have actors in the same space anymore, because of social distancing. So we've been doing things where, we were actually shooting actors, like we could have an actor in the Philippines, an actor in the UK, and the director, you know, in the United States.
Yes.
And what we would do is like, Adam, if we wanted to shoot a scene where you and Rob were in your studio, we would frame it up, you know, allow for space for Rob to composite it in, and basically shoot Rob on green screen. And we're actually doing over the shoulder shots and 2 shots and all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
Like normal, but it's weird. It's like applying special effects sort of technology just to get 2 people to be in the same room. And we've been doing that for the last couple of semesters now. It's actually works, but it's I don't think I can. Can I share my screen? Am I able to share my screen with you guys?
Yeah, you may share your screen.
Let me show you something here.
Right.
And let me see if it works here.
Press
I
the
don't
share.
know. Let's see. I'm pressing the share button,
Wait.
but I don't think it's working.
Since Rav's the host, I don't know if you have to approve of it or something.
Wants to share choose what you'd like to share. Oh, your entire screen. Oh, here. So check it out.
You want it sharing it now?
Yeah. So check it out. So like this is like, can you guys see what I'm showing?
Yeah,
you
three person composition.
Right. So this is a shot like we did for a scene where like these 3 people are just hanging out in a room, right? And this is how we did it, right? So they're all talking and hanging out. There's a woman outside the window. So we shot him alone with green screen outside his window. That's the first layer. We shot this guy in a completely different location, right? So this guy is shot in another part of the city because we can't social distancing.
Yes.
And so we composite him into the space, right? And then she's shot on another location entirely, and we put her, and then this is the final. And this is just to make like a 3 shot, you know, like none of these people are there, you know, right? So that's how that's how we've been doing. I'll stop sharing, but that's how we've been doing like school projects, you know, because there's no way to safely, unless you write scenes where people are like, how are you? You know, like you have to be like far away, you know, to do it.
Or on cell phones or something.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. Or write stories that, you know, that relate to this time when, you know, when you can't be next to somebody.
A modern day phone booth or something.
Something, yeah. Maybe that's the story. Maybe that's the story that needs to be written.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, so it's a weird time. So you do what you can. You know, you do whatever you can do to stay creative. Right.
Now we can
improvise. Yes.
I'm hosting this in the Philippines. Adam hosting it in UK, and you are in the US. So everything's possible now than before.
Yeah, I do think you're right. I do think that this is, in some strange way, has connected a lot of people that wouldn't otherwise be connected. So if there can be anything good that came out of it, it's probably this.
Yes, because before all of this happened, all of us were so busy doing our things outside our home. Like me, I was doing a lot of shoots. I was shooting TV shows outside. So it's not possible for me to have this PinoyChap with Adam because I was always busy. But because of what's happening, we got innovative with this.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I think that's super healthy. Yeah. I mean, I think it's good because I think we're, in many ways, it's kind of like therapy. You know, it's like these are crazy times. We were saying the last thing you needed, Rob, in your country was a typhoon. You know, like how many? It's just insane times. I mean, I'm constantly in this country, you know, like in the United States, to be like living with this kind of situation politically, it's like I never in my life. It's mad. It's absolute madness on top of the madness of COVID. So to have, I think we're all like trying to just survive
the best of it. Yeah.
So I think talking just even about film, you know, or anything that you love, doesn't matter.
Sharing our experiences too.
Is like a super healthy thing. Otherwise, you're just kind of sitting and you're spinning in your own craziness. You know?
We had in January we had a volcano erupting, and then March pandemic hits. We have the longest lockdown in the world.
Right.
So, until now, we were still in lockdown, and then a series of typhoon struck starting October. So yeah, we're surviving.
Well, check it out. So, like, we moved up to Portland. One of the things that we moved from LA to Portland was the air quality in LA is one of the worst in the world, right? It's terrible. And we've been so deprived of nature, and Portland is, and woods specifically, trees, you know. So we came up to Portland because that's something that we've been missing for many, many, many years. As soon as we get up here, in addition to the lockdown, we have like one of the worst forest fires.
Yes.
And for a period of 2 weeks, literally, Portland had the worst air quality on the planet. It was like the worst air in the world. And so it's like, you know, so these fires, you know, like, so it's like, it's just the whole, I don't know, maybe the whole planet is saying stop.
Yeah.
You know, like
the nature is angry. Yes.
Yeah. Right. You know, so insane times. So whatever gets you through the night, as they say.
Well, Jack, thank you very much for giving us your time. I know it's too early in there.
No, it's okay. It's my pleasure. I appreciate it. I enjoyed talking with you guys. Yeah.
Sharing your thoughts, sharing your experiences with us. And I'm very thankful actually. And
no, my pleasure.
Very, very in depth. Even though we kept repeating ourselves, like bringing up RoboCop all the time.
No, it's okay.
No, it's fun. Yeah, love it.
Maybe more people will check out. And this is we're talking about the original RoboCop, not the
remake.
No. I'm talking about Paul Verhoeven, Peter Weller RoboCop.
Yes.
Right. Just to be clear,
I've covered the whole franchise, the TV show as well, the cartoons. But
really cool. Cool.
Been through it all. Yeah.
Excellent.
Collected the toys as a kid as well.
Yeah, I actually had a little RoboCop buddy guy. Well, we should do this again. It'd be fun.
Yes, we will invite you again next time.
Okay, cool.
And we will be, moving forward, we will still be doing this even after everything is so to share our stories, to inspire new filmmakers like
New generation
filmmakers.
Excellent. That's great.
Like how me and Adam was inspired also. So doing these things. Yeah.
All it takes is one idea.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you guys stay safe. It's been a real pleasure. And, you know,
And you too, yeah.
have a great rest of your week.
I hope the cats don't bother you too much.
Yeah, well, now it's time to feed them again, I think. So, it never ends. So,
I'll take care all the same. And thank you again.
Care.
All right.
Bye.
See you guys. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Oh, Adam, it was
Another good episode. Another
good
good
episode.
great
We
time.
learned a lot of things. Yeah, with Jack, with his cats. Yeah.
I heard a little knock during when Jack was talking. I was wondering. I wonder if that was one of the cats, like knocking over something, since cats have that reputation for knocking everything over.
Knocking the TV down, everything. Yeah.
I grew up with cats myself, but so I know what they can be like. It doesn't help that I'm allergic to cats as well. I sneeze quite a lot when I'm near them.
That's why I prefer dogs than cats. Because go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say, I'm not as bad with dogs, but there have been some times when I've been allergic to dogs as well. It's to do with like the hairs on them, the fur. So it's like I forget what the term's called, but it's definitely cats and some dogs that I can be allergic to.
Okay. So yeah,
like terrible sinuses.
That was fun, and I just want to announce next week we're going back to our original time slot, 8:30 p.m. Sundays. We're going to talk to another Filipino, and it's gonna be a surprise. So we're not gonna divulge anything yet. So yes,
I'm glad you said that because I was about to say it. I was going to say, that's good. I won't bring it up.
So yeah, this Filipino is different from the other from Paul or other. So watch out. So it's gonna be more it's an interesting part of it. So yeah,
Keep an eye on the Facebook page for the announcement in the middle of next week.
Yes,
So
and
Wednesday or Thursday.
And please do like and share our. I know. I hope you like our episodes. So please do like and share our Facebook
Share it
page.
around. Send it to everybody.
Yeah, send it to
Tell them
everybody.
about it. Because
And if you,
we're just over 500 likes on the Facebook page, aren't we? Like 518, I believe, last time I checked.
yes,
So my promise from last week still stands. If we can get over 1,000 before the end of the year, I will do an episode without my hat, so you can see what my lockdown haircut is like. It's
yeah,
an absolute mess. Just because I can't. I'm not sure if the hairdressers are closed. I haven't actually checked, so maybe I can get it cut, but can't be bothered right now.
So are you still in lockdown?
We are, yeah. Last time I checked, the December the 2nd is
Mm-hmm.
when we should be reopening, but at the minute there's the possibility it might get extended. So I'm just going to believe it when I see it. So we'll
So
find
far
out.
here in the Philippines, our cases are going down. So I hope it will go down further because
Yeah.
I want to go out already. I want to go walk around. It's very hard to
Have you
go
been
around.
locked down since March, or has there been a period where everything reopened again? Because that's what happened in the UK. We got reopened from July till October.
We have a classification like ECQ, GCQ. So
Right.
ECQ is the total lockdown. We shifted to GCQ last June,
Yeah.
but went back to ECQ for I think 2 weeks last September. So
Right.
now we're back in GCQ, but everything now is getting what they call this
It's
uh,
plateaued.
loose. It's
Oh, yeah.
been loosening up now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people now in the mall, but still practicing social distancing, and you need to have
Masks and
face
things.
mask and face shield. So
I got both of you.
yeah, the both of it is
Oh, okay. Because in the UK, it's mostly face mask, but you are allowed to wear a visor, which is what I do because I can't really breathe very well with something over my
here.
face.
You need
I need a
to
visor, just covering the whole
you,
face.
yeah. Here you need both of them, yeah,
Oh,
or
okay.
else they cannot let you in.
Oh,
But yeah, it's very tough. Like Jack said, it's very tough time. He has
it's
what do you call this,
production been
forest
delayed.
fires. Yeah,
Oh,
we
yes.
have volcanoes and typhoons. I hope that's why when I saw Egyptian news that they're opening up the mummy, said no, please don't open the mummy. So it might get something worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a meme here in the Philippines. So volcano, pandemic, typhoon, the next Godzilla going out in the Pacific.
He's not too far away from you guys, so yeah, he probably will. He'll just
Move around.
what's the word? He'll just like ski across the ocean or something and
So yeah,
walk, can't he? Because he can just walk on the seabed.
see,
And I'm sure the ocean would probably reach his chest or something. I feel like that scene in Ghostbusters 2 when the Empire, the Statue of Liberty was walking, and then there's a bit where it's basically from the nose up. You can just see the Statue of Liberty.
So yeah, it was a great episode, Adam.
Yes, I hope everyone out there watching enjoyed it.
Yes. So yeah, thank you, and join us next week, 8:30 p.m. because we're moving back to our
12:30 in the UK.
12:30 in the UK.
We're going back to normal this time, yeah.
Yes. So watch it again. Thank you. Bye.
Take care.